The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Our detectives have determined that Madeline was never dropped off. Instead, we believe she was already dead at the time and that Stephan Sterns moved her body.
Why and how did this happen? Like, we cannot begin to process how could this happen.
Today we're announcing that Stephan Sterns has been indicted by the grand jury on first-degree murder for the killing of Madeline Soto.
A huge development this morning out of Florida as Stephan Sterns is set to have a plea hearing today. Now, this is just one day before his sex abuse trial was set to begin. Our legal eagles are weighing in on the potential plea this morning. Plus, some shocking new autopsy details revealed. We're shining a spotlight on the Idaho student murders case as we're gearing up for Brian Kohberger's sentencing on Wednesday. And also this hour, more family members speaking out after Georgia teen Sarah Grace Patrick was arrested for allegedly murdering her parents. We'll tell you why her cousin says she isn't shocked. And is Luigi Mangione's defense team trying to delay things? We'll talk about the latest motion filed in the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. We've got a wonderful show planned for you, so let's get it started. Grab that cup of coffee or tea, whatever you're having this morning. It's time for my opening statement. Justice for Madeline Soto. That's what police and prosecutors are aiming for in Florida with the cases against defendant Stephan Sterns. I call this guy Sicko Sterns because of these sickening allegations levied against him by the state of Florida. Prosecutors allege that he behaved like a predator, grooming, sexually assaulting, and murdering an innocent child, Madeline Soto, the 13-year-old daughter of his girlfriend. Those are sickening, sinister allegations against Sicko Sterns. And today we may see a plea of guilty from him. And if that happens, it's a smart move. If he pleads, he's legally smart to be throwing himself at the mercy of the justice system and hoping he can save his own life. Because right now, prosecutors want the death penalty for him. If he pleads, that counts as mitigation. It's taking responsibility for one's crimes, and that counts big time in a capital case. It would also be a giant step toward justice for beautiful Madeline Soto. That sweet, innocent little child never had a chance, in my opinion, as long as her mother had her underneath the same roof as that guy and in the same bed as that guy. That mother should be ashamed of herself. And I will not be surprised if she is charged before this case is all said and done. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
She reported fuzzy feeling like her whole life was flashing before her eyes.
In Washington, we've got the attempted honor killing trial. This one's resuming today in Washington State. Court dark on Friday. More medical professionals are expected to be taking the stand. In Florida, we've got the in-law massacre sentencing for Shelby Neely. That one continues today. Court's set to get underway at 8:30 a.m. time. Will he get life or death? The jury is going to recommend something. And as we mentioned in Florida, Stephan Sterns set to be in court for a change of plea hearing one day before his sex abuse trial was expected to begin. That is, of course, our top story for you this morning. Sterns is accused of sexually abusing Madeline Soto, his girlfriend's 13-year-old child. It looks like he's going to be pleading to both the homicide case and the sex abuse case. By the filings that we took a look at, it looks like this is going to be a plea to both cases. And we spoke to WFTV reporter Giovanni Diaz in Orlando about that potential plea. Let's take a listen.
According to our sources here at Channel 9 WFTV, he he was able to actually get off the death row, and he is going to end up spending the rest of his life in prison. The defense team wanted to avoid a trial altogether because it would be very hard to not get the maximal penalty for him, in this case, the maximal sentence for him, I should say, in this case, because, again, this was a case that left this community here really concerned and on edge.
Okay, so source reporting there from our affiliate WFTV saying that it looks like there may be an agreement as to sentence, but we at Court TV have not confirmed that. So as far as we're concerned, they're still seeking the death penalty until we hear otherwise. Plea hearing set for 1:30 p.m. Eastern time today. We've got our cameras all ready to go. What can we expect? Let's bring in our legal eagles. I've got with me this morning criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Mario Gallucci, and attorney and former solicitor in South Carolina, also former SLED agent as well, attorney Tommy Pope. Good morning to you both. Great to see you on this Monday. All right, so what are we thinking this morning? Are we thinking that this deal removes the death penalty? Tommy, you many times come on as one of our experts who's done death penalty work in the past. What does this sound like to you, hearing that source reporting from WFTV?
When I first heard it, I would have thought the former. In other words, that we'll plead guilty to everything. Death penalty's off the table. And, you know, for the victims, I personally like that. It gives closure. I always say if you try a death penalty, you're going to try it 2 or 3 times, and it's going to be the state versus so-and-so. You're going to hear their name forever and not hear your loved one's name near enough. And so the good thing about if it is a plea and if life means life, you know, he'll be gone. The other would be, and Mario could probably weigh in more on this, is a strategy by the defense, like you said in your lead-in, talking about mitigation. You know, so in the second phase of a death penalty trial, guilt is established, and then it's aggravation or mitigation. And so taking responsibility, they may feel an opportunity is better, you know, before a judge if they're before him in that stature. But in my experience with judges in cases like this, I don't know that that would make much difference with the ultimate verdict. I think a judge would likely give the death penalty too. So going back with that, it's probably the former that they have agreed to remove it, take it out from consideration.
Really helpful insight. Tommy, thank you. And I appreciate the tee up, because that's exactly what I wanted to ask Mario. Looking at the defense side for us, please, Mario. What are your thoughts when you heard about this on the eve of the trial?
Well, strategically, on both cases, he's looking at the death penalty. And if the death penalty is there and you try the case in front of the same judge that's going to give you life without parole or the death penalty, and he's now going to hear all of the facts in the case during a trial, it's not going to behoove you to not take a plea. So without knowing what the plea is, I'm assuming Tommy's correct, especially after we got the reporting, that the death penalty is off the table and he's just going to serve life in prison. So one of the most difficult things as a prosecutor was always to deal with your victims. You know, your victims get traumatized every single time you go to court. And if you have to try this case as a death penalty case, just like Tommy said, you're trying the case over and over and over again, exposing the victims to this constant barrage of remembering these events. So, you know, this is a good disposition if they're able, good disposition if they're able to get the death penalty off the table.
Most definitely. Mario, thank you for all of that. You're right. Could we talk a little bit about who may be consulted in the weighty decision to remove the death penalty? Tommy Pope, back to you here. Jennifer Soto, Madeline's mom, as we know, is Stephan Sterns' girlfriend. Tommy, what kind of weight do you give her opinion and her feelings on this if you're the prosecutor, especially if you think there may be some culpability with her? I know a lot of our courties, and you and Mario know this, a lot of people feel very strongly about Jennifer Soto putting Madeline in a bad position with this guy. She hasn't been charged. I want to be clear, she's not charged. I'm curious how much weight you give her opinion, Tommy.
Sure, Julie. So what I always explain to our families and to your viewers is it's the state versus so-and-so. It's the state having a separate action. It's not a civil action where I represent the victims in the case. It's a criminal action. The state comes against them. So while they're included in the South Carolina, we have a Victims' Bill of Rights. They're included from a conversational standpoint, from an informational standpoint, but not the ultimate decision making. But to go back to your kind of core question, with the families, I always try to include them because I recognize this is my job and they're living this. I try to inform them as much as possible. And 99 times out of 100, we're in accord. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility as the solicitor, as the prosecutor, to make those hard decisions. In this case with the mother, I would hear her out. But again, I kind of had it in the Smith case. I talked to Susan Smith's mother because she was the grandmother of the kids. And, ultimately, I kind of deferred to David, the father, who was really feeling the pain. But so I would hear her out. I would talk to her out of courtesy. We don't know behind the scenes. Maybe she was held captive by him or, psychologically. And so I'm going to hear. But at the end of the day, going back to all the things that Mario shared a minute ago, this is better for them as a whole and better for the system if we can have this resolution. And I can't imagine her saying the opposite. It seems like she'd be pulling in the other direction from what I could see. But I would hear her, but the decision would remain with me.
Yeah, really great explainer, Tommy. And I'm sure, you and Mario both have been in this situation, having been prosecutors, where sometimes victims can think you're their attorney, and you have to be very clear, and I'm sure you both were. You have to, many times I have to say, no, I'm not, I represent, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in my situation. But it's, you may have a civil lawyer, like Tommy Pope, like you do civil work now, because, as you said, it's the government, the state making that decision, not a mother or grandmother, whomever the victims may be. I want to play a clip of Stephan Sterns. This is where he's talking to police. It's the day after Madeline went missing, and he's retracing his steps for them. And Mario, I'm going to come to you on the other side. Here we go.
Was he here?
It was along this stretch. I can't remember the exact spot, but it was around where these communities were. Oh, thank you. So it's like around where these communities were.
Okay.
And it's just like in this stretch, like we could see the overpass down there.
Where's the school?
Just on the other side of the overpass.
2105. So somewhere around here.
So yeah, somewhere, maybe not this one, but the next one possibly is right in this stretch. When we just came down and we drove about halfway down, she was like, that's good right here.
Okay.
Oh, Mario, this guy went against all your rules. Talk to all the police investigators. He said so much. That was just one of many clips that we've got. Does he talk today? A lot of people are wondering, is he going to say anything if he does plead guilty? What do you think we can expect, Mario?
He has to speak. He has to admit his guilt to both of these crimes. Without an admission of guilt, he cannot take a plea. It's just a question of what the prosecution is going to request in the allocution, when he makes his plea. Are they going to want him to detail exactly what he did, how he did it, how he, got rid of the body, why he did it? Or they're just going to take a basic little allocution from him saying, did you do X or did you do Y? I would assume in a case of this gravity with this type of victim that it's going to be a very significant allocution where he's expected to detail every act he did and how he disposed of his body.
Oh, I sure hope so. Mario Gallucci, Tommy Pope, excellent analysis from you both. As always, go refill your coffee. Friends at home, go do the same. We're going to hit our first break of the hour. When we come back, here's what's coming up for you on Opening Statements.
We're still kind of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, but I can tell you what led us here today, and that's the evidence that Sarah killed her parents. Who knows what's going on in a young person's mind like that?
More family members speaking out after Sarah Grace Patrick was arrested for her parents' murder. Why her cousin was suspicious all along. And Killer Koberger sentencing scheduled for Wednesday. This morning, we've got new information for you about the gruesome way in which those Idaho 4 students were murdered.
The Court TV Podcast. will return.
An arrest has been made in the case. Kristen Brock's 17-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, has been taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of her mother and her stepfather.
Now for what's trending in true crime, so many people talking about the deadly daughter murder case in Georgia. The defendant's name is Sarah Grace Patrick. She's 17 years old, and more of her family members are speaking out after her arrest. Police say that she shot and killed her mother and her stepfather inside of their home back in February. And she called 911 to report the killings, even posted about the deaths on social media, reaching out to true crime TikTokers, asking for some attention on the case. She was arrested earlier this month, turned herself in on a warrant. WJCL in Savannah spoke to her cousin, Kristen Dowda, who says she was not surprised.
Obviously, we were glad that, someone was finally being held accountable for this. And we, of course, had our suspicions. So it wasn't that shocking. Nothing that raised an alarm to me, just a typical teenage girl. But Jamie had told us multiple times that Sarah was not who we thought she was. You don't see what I see. You don't live in the home with her.
Oh my. Now, what could have sparked this deadly shooting? Police didn't see any signs of forced entry. She and her younger sister, 5-year-old sister, in the home. It was the 5-year-old who discovered her mother and father. How horrific is that? And then all these months go by. Then they get the warrant for her arrest. She turns herself in. And everything is still sealed right now. But investigators are saying that they have mountains of evidence against this child. That's what they're saying. We have yet to see it. So if it's true, if what police are saying is true, why on earth would this child do this? Let's bring in double board-certified psychiatrist Dr. Dominic Sportelli and high-profile criminal defense attorney Mario Gallucci, still with us. All right, Dr. Dom, I want to really lean into your expertise here with this child. Of course, she's cloaked in the presumption of innocence, as you know, but just for the sake of our analysis here today, let's lean into what police are alleging here. They're saying that this 17-year-old not only took these 2 lives, but then wanted to get sympathy and wanted to put attention on the case, so was reaching out on social media, doing some engineering to try to get bloggers and people interested in true crime following it and talking about it.
Good morning, Julie. Thank you so much. Yeah, so what we're dealing with here is a case of parricide, right? This is when children murder their parents. It's incredibly rare. It's 2% of homicides. It's usually a single perpetrator. It's usually a single victim. But what I'm hearing here, as a board-certified adolescent child psychiatrist as well, dealing with kids and troubled kids quite often, we see something called adolescent egocentrism. And this is actually quite normal. I probably remember back when I was a teenager, I think we are very self-centered. I think that we take risky behaviors. But what's troubling here is that we're seeing a potential pattern of behavior. Now, we heard from the individual in that clip that there was some other stuff going on that we didn't know about. And honestly, what I would love to know more about was what was going on in that family. Was there conflict? Was there dysfunction? Was there any pattern of behavior that was seen in this perpetrator, like a disregard for other people's feelings, maybe sociopathic tendencies, maybe narcissistic tendencies? Was there something called conduct disorder where you're actually getting into trouble and taking excessive risky behavior? So, this doesn't shock me when I hear this with this adolescent egocentrism. And nowadays with TikTok and all of these social media platforms, this can be magnified because now these kids have a desire for fame. And that comes from social validation needs and narcissistic traits, low self-esteem, things like that.
Dr. Dom, this is fascinating hearing you speak about this, because something I was wondering about was, is it that maybe this child was looking for fame from this, or was it that she was trying to engineer things so that investigators wouldn't look to her? I'm so curious. Or could it be both, maybe, psychologically?
Well, it sounds incredibly manipulative. I mean, if you look back at the case, the fact that she wasn't initially a suspect, helped organize the funeral, spoke at the funeral, you know, that means, I mean, clearly that she has sociopathic tendencies with lack of empathy, lack of remorse, and manipulative behavior to even be able to act in that manner after the murders. And then reach out to a social media platform to say, hey, this is an attention-seeking thing, this will go viral, right? So all of those behaviors sound very sociopathic and very manipulative.
They sure do. Wow, Dr. Dom, great information from you as always. You mentioned her speaking at the funeral. We've got a clip where she delivers that tearful eulogy. Let's take a look, and Mario, I'm coming to you on the other side.
I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. I love you guys, and so do I. And so do they. I'm sorry.
My goodness. Mario, you've seen a lot in criminal court over the years. Your thoughts when you saw this?
Well, I actually tried this case. I tried the Eric Bellucci case twice, where he assassinated both his mother and father, and he was clearly insane. He suffered from a mental defect or disease. And like the doctor just said, you know, there's you know, I'm not a doctor, but there's these mental diseases, but, you know, seeking attention to me is not a mental disease. And the way she gave that eulogy, the way she contacted that blogger, and she gave the blogger information about the homicide that wasn't really known. They say that there's a mountain of evidence. We haven't seen any of the evidence yet, but let's make believe that there is a mountain of forensic evidence tying this young lady to the crime. Your defense is going to be, you know, NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. And in order to accomplish that, you need to prove that you suffer from a mental disease. And you need to convince the jury that other than the fact that you suffered from this mental disease, you would have never killed your parents. If they can't buy that, she's got some significant issues here. I mean, this is a tough case for this young lady.
It sure is. Great information, Mario. I want to take it a step further with you. So Sarah Grace's grandfather is standing by her side. Dennis Nolan is his name. There he is. You feel so bad for him. It was his daughter that's Sarah Grace's mother. So he lost his daughter here. He sat down with us. He described their family dynamic as being pretty normal, said he didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. He said there's no way his granddaughter could have done what police say she did.
She was here, and whenever we shot guns, they were rifles. I never saw her shoot a pistol, but I just can't imagine, you know, the accuracy that that gun had in her hands. I don't think it could happen.
Now, investigators are still monitoring all of the online chatter with this case. A motion for bond has been filed. No court date set yet for that. So we're wondering, should this young lady be released on bond? Mario, this is a tough one. You've been a prosecutor as well. What do you think the judge should do with her?
Really going to depend on the evidence. I mean, if they're able to go into a bail hearing and demonstrate to a court that they have significant forensic evidence tying this young lady to the crime, it's going to be very difficult for a court to allow her back out because of the safety to the community. If she's capable of killing her mother and stepfather, you know, what do we know she's not capable of doing? With that being said, if the evidence to the judge isn't really overwhelming, she is only a 17-year-old girl, although they're trying her as an adult, there is a possibility that he could put her on house arrest with a GPS monitor, allowing her out to just go to doctor's appointments, lawyer visits, and church. It's really going to be up to the amount of evidence that the prosecutor is going to be able to demonstrate at the bail hearing itself.
Excellent points. Mario Gallucci, stand by for more questions, please. We're going to hit a break. Here's what's next on Opening Statements.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And Mr. Koberg, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence?
Yes.
Shocking new autopsy information coming out as Bryan Kohberger is gearing up for his next day in court, his sentencing day. That's on Wednesday. Plus, accused killer Luigi Mangione back in the headlines, this time for his defense team's latest motion. We're wondering, is it a delay tactic? We'll break it down with our legal eagles.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Only when I lay in bed on my own, and I wake up and I see your name on my phone.
It was made from the roommate's phone, excuse me, and we're not going to divulge who made that call.
So they came here together. They eventually get into the same apartment together.
Is this your place?
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why we're here?
And I assume noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the end, they died together.
In our spotlight this morning, Idaho student killer Bryan Kohberger and his sentencing, which is only 2 days away. As we're waiting on the judge to start releasing documents, we're gleaning some new information from a new book. Now, Kohberger pleaded guilty to killing Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin in their off-campus home back in 2022. In the Idaho 4, we're learning more about the injuries to the three of the four students, I should say. Now, the medical examiner says that all of the lethal wounds were to the chest area or above. Ethan Chapin was stabbed in his carotid artery and in his buttocks as he was laying on his side on the bed. The fingers of his girlfriend, Xana Kernodle, were almost severed from her defensive wounds. And Kaylee Gonsalves' wounds suggest that she woke up when it all happened and that she struggled. Now, the author of the book, James Patterson, told Fox News, "We may never know why Kohberger did it."
Complicated, and we'll never know. I bet if I talk to him, I bet he doesn't exactly know. He obviously had a big problem with women. We believe he was targeting Maddie, and things had happened. He just gotten fired from his, he was going to lose his scholarship out there at University of Washington State. I'll tell you one thing, anybody listening and watching, if you're disappointed because you're not going to find out what's happening in the trial, everything that would have been covered in the trial is covered in this book.
Now, the gag order was lifted last week, and Moscow police say that they're preparing to release investigative files after the sentencing. The judge said the same about things in the court file. He's going to be going through them after he imposes the sentence on Kohberger, and then everything that is able to be released to the public will be. Let's talk some more about the why. Will we ever know it? Still with me, double board certified psychiatrist Dr. Dominic Sportelli and attorney, lawmaker, former SLED agent, and former solicitor Tommy Pope. All right, so let's talk about the motive here. That was interesting hearing what James Patterson said. He said, I think he doesn't even know exactly why, talking about Kohberger not really knowing or having a very specific motivation here. Dr. Dom, acknowledging that you have not personally evaluated Bryan Kohberger, how we wish that you could, and report back. Based on everything you've heard, research you've done, all of the various interviews you've watched, court proceedings you've watched, is there anything that's really stood out to you as a psychiatrist that's made you go, I think it could be this for this reason?
Yeah, Julie, I think the presentation that we see is of a cold and calculated, zero empathy individual who likely meets criteria for a sociopathic personality. I'll tell you what strikes me more, though, is learning about his history, learning about his personality, learning about his likes and his dislikes, because that, to me, tells me more about what potentially shaped these behaviors. And, as James Patterson said, maybe we'll never know. And maybe Bryan himself doesn't even know. Maybe years down the line when he's incarcerated, just like Ted Bundy, just like David Berkowitz, they might talk about their crimes for various reasons, personal satisfaction, attention, etc. But when I see Bryan's history, specifically the PhD in criminology, studying psychopaths like Ted Bundy, studying individuals like Elliot Rodger, who in James Patterson's book there are so many incredible correlations between those two individuals. Elliot Rodger wrote a manifesto of the involuntary celibacy movement prior to committing his murders. Why does somebody write a manifesto? To articulate their beliefs, to articulate their motivations, to recruit individuals, to allow other individuals to understand you. And it sounds as though, based on Brian's history of being socially isolated, of having a diagnosis of autistic disorder, being misogynistic, feeling slighted and injusticed by females, the way he acted towards young women in his school and his teaching, it really aligns with what someone like Elliot Rodger did.
This is fascinating, Dr. Dom. The sociopathy at play here, you know, because many of the lay people like myself, you know, look at this guy and say, oh my gosh, you know, he's a sociopath. And, you know, I don't have the training and the education and experience that you do in that regard. Just being in criminal court, you know, you see them. You see them. Tommy Pope, you know what it's like. My gosh, sociopathic people, you've certainly prosecuted them throughout your career. Tell me what you see when you look at Brian Kohberger and think about the why, looking at the facts, Tommy, legally, what speaks to you most in terms of his motivation for these killings?
You know, I think the doctor, as far as his background and kind of who he is, was spot on. And, you know, I tell victims a lot of times, we just want a trial because we want to know the truth. And I said, you could have a full-blown trial and you may still not know. He doesn't have to testify. The combination I see, I remember I had a young man one time that robbed a convenience store. I say robbed. He went in, shot the clerk, didn't take anything, cash registers right there. He was like 17 years old. He had been playing video games and, you know, right when the first person shooters started coming out, and he said that he wanted to feel what it was like to really kill somebody. So if you combine what the doctors just told us with maybe the resentment, you know, a lot of people have been, say, rejected by the pretty girls or laughed at by the college girls or whatever. And that resentment, some of us deal with it. And so, you know, and I could see a combination. And then there was a lot of rage and it's a lot of personal interaction with the killing. You know, it's not a distance with a gun. You walk in and shoot 4 people and leave. You know, stabbing is very, very personal. And shows me signs of an aggression that, as strangely as it sounds, shooting a gun may not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right, Tommy. I'm so glad you said that. There is something so intimate with stabbings. I could think to being a prosecutor, you know, there's something just, there's more distance with the shooting. It's not as personal. It's just an awful, awful thing. And to think that he did 4 of them with that huge K-bar knife, it's chilling. Something I've thought a lot about, his fascination with criminology. Could we talk about that in so much as could this have been a motivator? Dr. Dom, he was a student, wanted to be a professor in this area. Do you think that somehow could have played into this desire to kill?
Yeah, Julie, it's quite possible. Now, that's not all that uncommon for individuals who have certain desires and feelings and beliefs to study them. We call that intellectualization. For example, if someone has an anxiety disorder, they learn as much as they can about it to try and intellectualize it and understand it and control it. You know, if somebody grows up with sociopathic tendencies, conduct disorder, personality disorders, anger, resent, desire to harm others potentially, it's really about having a sense of control and having a sense of power. Now, think about that. If you get a PhD in criminology, how much power and control do you think that someone might have over forensic evidence, over if they were to engage in a crime, commit the perfect crime? I know everything. I've studied the minds of these other individuals that I think like or might align with in some way, shape, or form. So ultimately, when individuals like Brian Kohberger study criminology with underlying psychopathic traits, it's a sense of power and control.
Oh my gosh, it's so fascinating hearing you say this, Dr. Dom. I think a lot of our courties really appreciate that because, you know, as lay people, we want to know, well, what's the psychology behind it? And he said nothing at that plea hearing, as we all know, and that was so frustrating to so many victims. Tommy Pope, when it comes time for sentencing, do you think we'll get any type of explanation from him, any type of remorse from him in that courtroom?
You know, Julie, you've been in plenty of courtrooms, and every defendant's different. You know, I've got my last call on death row now. He couldn't help but talk. He wanted to talk. He wanted to allocute, speak to the judge. You know, he would have been his own. Well, he's fired his attorney several times to be his own attorney, but maybe not the record of 10 we see with some other defendants. But he, it's really up to who he is. He could do clean clip, yes, 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 yes. You're not required an explanation. Sometimes they'll do the family apology thing. Sometimes it feels real and sometimes it's contrived. But if he's as dialed in as the doctor says he is to this, I don't anticipate, unless he's wanting to brag about it, so to speak, you know, by getting some thrill by telling exactly what he did, which is what my guy Jimmy did. He would tell in detail beating his father with the bat and the claw hammer and squirting him with Tilex and all these things. So I think unless he's getting some joy out of it, I will say that, kind of dovetailing to what the doctor was saying, his personality, you know, I read historical fiction, you know, with wars and battles and swords, and I try to envision, you know, that I would have that resourcefulness or that bravery or whatever the case. Well, if you idolize or identify with serial killers, the difference is I'm not likely to fight a group of Vikings in my village, but by the same token, he is in a position to carry out basically his fantasy or his role model. And I think he did exactly that. And now the question is, does he want to brag about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Boy, Tommy Pope, I hope you write a book someday. I think it could be a bestseller with all that you've seen and done in your illustrious career. I hope you will do that. And you are coming back for Court TV Live, so we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much, Tommy Pope. And big thanks to you, Dr. Dom Sportelli. You're a busy doctor, we know, and we appreciate you making time to do some television with us today. Such fascinating insight. Thank you kindly. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, we're going to take you to New York. Luigi Mangione, is he trying to delay his trial? We'll break down the brand new motion that his defense team just filed.
Luigi, do it. And it's completely out of touch. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Luigi, do it. And it's completely out of touch. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Let's talk about what may be tipping the scales this morning in the case against Luigi Mangione, the accused killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. In some new court filings, Mangione's attorneys claim that prosecutors reviewed over 100 pages of confidential medical records illegally. They write to the court saying in part, quote, the district attorney falsely made up a court date and drafted a fraudulent subpoena that if Aetna did not provide documents on that date, it would be in contempt of court. Aetna says they simply responded to the subpoena. The DA's office says that they requested some very limited information and that Aetna sent them additional materials in error. All right, so could this tip the scales for Luigi Mangione, or is this just a delay tactic from the defense? Let's bring in former prosecutor and high-profile criminal defense attorney Mario Gallucci. All right, Mario, so what do you think? What's going on with this motion?
So I love when I comment on this case. It's, you know, always Mario and Luigi.
Yeah.
But
and for anyone who doesn't know, your dog's name is Luigi. Well, one of them.
Yes.
Vito's the other one, but
Yes.
I love that they have
Yes.
Italian names. Anyway, side note. Go ahead, my friend.
So the prosecutors have subpoena power, but that power is limited. When you're requesting medical records of this type, they would go to the court, and then the court would either review them and then make them available to both sides. We had this in the treadmill case where we both subpoenaed all of the child welfare records. They go to the court. The court then, in that case, would review them to see if there's anything in those records that shouldn't be out in public, and then limit our exposure. In this case, what Ms. Agnafilo was trying to say is that the prosecution went around that. They got these medical records right to their office. They did so without telling anybody about it, which could give them an unfair advantage. If there's things in those medical records that are good for the defense, that would be an issue. If there's no reason for a prosecutor to do what they did in this case. There were rules. And if they violated those rules, there could be significant consequences here. I mean, the judge could suppress medical evidence if he chooses to do so in this type of case if they did something that they were not supposed to do. They could actually be brought up on HIPAA violation charges, which is a federal crime. There's an ABA rule, I believe it's 3.8, that the prosecution they have a responsibility to uphold the law. And subpoena power has its limits, like I just said. So there could be significant issues here. I'm interested to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all of that, Mario. So big consequences here. I think people wonder, could the ultimate consequence happen? Could this be cause for dismissal entirely?
No way. There's no way a judge is going to dismiss this case. They could suppress some of the evidence, like I just said. If there's, medical records that were going to be used against him, the judge could say, you know what, you got these records illegally, now you're not going to be able to use them during trial. So there could be consequences here, but this case is not going to get dismissed based upon something like this.
Right, and thank you for that, Mario. The attorney, Ms. Agnifilo, her husband, also an attorney, I know you know him. Have you practiced with her as well? Have you all ever been at trial together or seen her in trial?
I have met Karen. I've never tried anything with her. I have been with Mark. They're both of them are knocking it out of the park right now. One just did Diddy and one's doing Mangione.
Right.
So they're very good.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember you telling me you know Mark, and he's got an excellent reputation. You shared with me in New York for doing such a great job. And if you can still hear me, Mario, are you good? I see you got your other, okay, earpiece, perfect. How about her reputation? Does she have a reputation getting a lot of high-profile cases?
She's very well known in the criminal defense community. She's very good. She's very aggressive, just like Mark. Very good on papers. Very good on research. I mean, you're seeing this type of motion made because of her ability to say, "Hey, you know what? There's rules here. You're not following the rules."
Yeah, boy, I can't wait to watch some more with this case. We know she is fighting hard for her client. We know he's got a lot of support, that Luigi Mangione. Mario Gallucci, so great having you on the show as always. You've got cases to win. You got to get to court. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. We'll see you soon. And that's all for this episode of Opening Statements, friends. Watch it again. Share it with your friends if you liked it. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.